This is Vincent Chiafalo with wildrootspermaculture.com, and today we're going to be doing something really exciting. We're going to harvest wild grapevines that are growing locally. And then I'm going to show you how to take those from its natural environment, how to trim them to create sprigs or cuttings that we're going to root and then put into some 1-gallon pots. And then we'll be starting a whole vineyard, a whole garden of grapes. So these are the supplies that you're going to need. You're going to need a 5-gallon bucket or something similar to hold water. Go ahead and fill it up about halfway with water. A shovel with a point tip is always good for breaking through the surface. A pair of Fiskars is a good idea. You may or may not need these. And a pair of gloves is always a good idea too. Let's go get some grapes. Yeah. Look at the sand in my van. That's what you need, some sand right there. Alright, that'll do. Alright, where to find your grapevines? You can get your grapevines anywhere you want. If you have a friend with a vineyard, definitely call them up and see if you can get some cuttings. You could also go to a local winery, like here in Murrieta, California. Our sister city is Temecula, California, and it's famous for its wine country. So I could very easily get on the phone, call the wineries and ask them for some cuttings. A lot of times they are willing to give you a bucket full of cuttings in a bucket of water. You can just take them home and get going, and you can kind of skip this whole step of going out and finding your own grapevines and cutting them yourself. But that's kind of like part of the fun. And this is really exciting for me because what we have is just not too far from my home. There are some grapes growing wild. We can go out into nature and find self-sustaining systems and then model those. So we take a look at the systems that exist in nature, and then we just model those things back in our gardens. They are growing like fuck there. In the creek bed. The creek bed is where it's at. Can you jump? Are you a good jumper?
No.
No? Okay, we might want to go the easy way then. Alright guys, let's take a look at this for a second. This is a wild grapevine growing right here. And you can see there's nothing around it. There's a sprig popping up over there. And look at all the grapes growing down in the creek bed. Look how many of them there are. These guys are self-sustaining. That means they've got their roots down into a source of water and they're surviving. This is awesome. This should be really exciting for people, guys. This is food that's growing in the wild. So we can take samples of this back into our home and consider our backyard the wild, and then we'll have food growing in our backyard. What up, world? So here we are in the creek. Now this is an annual wash, and it'll run for a few weeks out of the year, every year when it rains. Other than that, it just sits pretty much as a dry creek bed all year long. But this is a natural habitat. Water comes through here, it feeds plants, it feeds animals, and there's an ecosystem taking place here. And one of the elements in here are the grapevines. So the story of, let's go take a look at this grapevines. Look at this beautiful culture that is taking place right here. This grapevine, it looks like it started all the way back here. Look at the freaking width. Look at the size of the vine, of this trunk. If you get back in there and look inside, the trunk itself is like probably the size of my leg. It's huge. And as you can see, no one is tending this vine plant. It is wild. It is just, there's no trellis. It's just one layer of vines over the next. Each year, these nice new green vines this nice new green growth comes out, and it covers up the previous year's vine. See this root, this vine right here I just pulled out of the dirt? This is underneath the soil like this, but when I got here. And what will happen is you're gonna get roots starting to pop up and grow out of this. So let's find an example of that. Okay, so take a look at this vine right here. This extends all the way to the main plant, but it comes out here and then bam, it hits this dirt. So some dirt fell on top of this vine, or it was pushed down by the weight of the plant itself. And what happened is roots spread out from that space, and if you look down below, you'll see the roots right down below. And they're growing out down looking for water. And what happened right here? A new plant came up. So you have this plant now, this whole piece right here growing. Isn't that beautiful? So there's a lot of grape plant here. We're only gonna need to take a small sample of this to start a big garden. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take one big piece of the grape plant that has its roots in the ground still. We're just gonna pull that up and then take it home and chop it into pieces. We can just go home and cut this into, I'd say we've got about 3, 4, maybe 5 cuttings we can take off of this right here. That will turn into 4 or 5 small plants that will sit in 1-gallon pots and they get transplanted in the ground. And then in 3 years, we'll have a bush covered in grapes. And as you can see, this is the time of year when these guys start flowering and producing buds and grapes. So come fall, we'll have that will be a nice big juicy bunch of grapes on this plant that's growing wild. So all you gotta do is take your cuttings, drop them into a bucket of water, and then you're ready to go. Let's take these babies home. Isn't that pretty? Alright, let's get these guys in the backyard and we'll trim them up. This is a compost that I purchased locally, and it's, as you can see, it's got a lot of woody materials in it, which is humus, and then it also has a mixture of manures and such. It's actually probably too rich for the grapevine, so I'm gonna mix this half with soil and half with dirt. You don't want to give your grapes too much nutrients. Consider the source here. This plant just came from the wild. No one was taking care of it, nobody was giving it anything, and it was doing great. So it doesn't need a whole lot. So I'm just gonna take some of my dirt, mix it with a little bit of this compost, and then we're gonna stick them in there. They spray copper on organic strawberries in order to preserve them before they get to you. So I don't like the idea of my strawberries being sprayed with copper. That's just not natural. If I picked strawberries in my backyard, all I would do is rinse them off and eat them. I went and I took some of these grapes, and I was actually eating them, and they were like small. As I recall, they actually turned purple. They were small purple grapes, and they had a little small seed inside. Now I'm going to show you how to trim and mix cutting from a branch. So here we have a big branch. There's a lot of different growth on this particular one. So we're just gonna, all you really need is 2 or 3 buds at the top, and then the rest of the plant will just be your root stock. So we're gonna cut this off, this part off the rootstock. We're gonna cut this bud off, okay? And then we're just gonna pick one way or the other here. We've got a Y. So we're gonna pick one way or the other, which direction we wanna go. I'm just gonna clip this one off. And again, take off the lower foliage, and then just leave the top about something like that. So what we have is, this is a bud right here. That's gonna grow into a whole new plant. This is a bud right here that's gonna grow into a plant. And these buds right here, I just trimmed them off. But if this thing is really resilient, that'll just keep growing more green this year, and then we'll see some foliage growing this year. Then all you gotta do is just drop it into a bucket of water, leave it for 24 to 48 hours. It's gonna start soaking, getting this area here prepared to grow roots. Or alternatively, you can just go ahead and stick it into your 1-gallon pot. I'm just gonna get a hole down the center. You don't want to take it all the way to the bottom, because you want to leave like 2 inches at the bottom there so that it has a place to grow roots. If you take it all the way to the bottom, then where are the roots gonna grow? So just stick it down to about that far down there, and then make sure it's really wet on the first watering. Maybe water it like 4 or 5 times. Like let that soak and water and soak and water, and do that like 4 or 5 times or something, just to make sure that you're getting out all the air and that this is fully hydrated. And then in a matter of months, you should see some new growth over the season, and then within 3 years, you will have a full-grown grape plant growing grapes that you'll be eating. The older these things get, the more they produce. And they They don't need anything. These are not greedy plants. They don't need a lot of nutrients. They don't need a lot of attention, care. You can prune your grapes if you want to, or you can let them grow wild. You can see the plants there in the creek bed were totally wild, totally unmanicured, and they had bunches of grapes growing all over them. So we're just gonna give them one last soak. Now what you want to do is keep your cutting in the shade for a while. Maybe for the first month or so, just keep it like in the shade so that it won't go into shock. And then slowly but surely, it'll be ready to go in the ground. Okay, now usually most people would take all the foliage off of the plant so that it doesn't stress and it doesn't have more to support while it's growing roots, so it can focus on growing roots. And just like I've done here, all the foliage is off. But I like to experiment because you never know what this plant is capable of doing. It is a highly resilient plant. We know that because it was wild. So I'm just gonna drop it in a bucket of water like this for 24 to 48 hours and then plant it in soil and see what happens to the foliage. If the plant doesn't want it there, it will drop it. And if I see it dropping its leaves, I'll help it out and just take those leaves off and let it focus on growing roots. But if these things stay green and they just keep growing, then I'm gonna leave it like that and just let it keep growing. Now, I just took a few branches off of this plant, and just by going through it carefully and trimming it up, I have probably got like, I don't even know, like 25 or 50 of these guys. So I'm basically starting a whole vineyard over here easily and for free. So that's how it works, guys. All right, guys, so that's how you take grape cuttings from a wild grape plant or anywhere that you get them, cut them, root them, and plant them so that you can have grapes growing in your own urban permaculture garden. This has been another episode with Wild Roots Permaculture. Again, I'm Vincent Chiafalo, and check us out at wildrootspermaculture.com.